Okay, a lot of talk about the gender pay gap in the UK, so that is what I want to talk about in this video. Very off the cuff. Okay, boom, by the way, boom, it's time to pull the pin once again on the purple hand grenade of progress, justice, righteousness, self-righteousness, righteous selfishness, which is the one that I personally subscribe to, obviously. And in this video, like I say, I want to talk about the gender pay gap, very off the cuff, just a few feelings on this. And the whole thing has been sold to us like this is an analysis that needs to take place. And it's not something to prejudge, and it's not necessarily absolutely goal-oriented. Who's to say that there aren't some justifications for a gender pay gap? As they keep telling you, it's not about equal pay. Right, it's not about the same pay for the same work. It's looking at each organisation, and every organisation in the United Kingdom with over 250 employees had to give their figures for this. It's to see whether it's for legitimate reasons or not. But it doesn't seem to work out that way. In the way that the press has been reporting it, any pay gap is unacceptable. Effectively, you have to have a gap of zero. And people's personal choices can't figure into it. The way that people choose to run their lives can't figure into it. Somehow, magic, it's going to have to involve magic, because I'm sure when we look at all the individual things that we're going to have to do, they'll say that they're not acceptable. So we're going to have to use fucking magic somehow to make all these gaps go away. And that concerns me, because I have no problem looking at these figures. Right, I have no problem with looking at these figures, but then every company should be analysing these figures and saying, are these figures, is this right? Are we doing something wrong? Are we discriminating here? Are we treating everybody right here? Right, are we promoting our businesses right, etc., etc., promoting our positions right? And that even includes if you've got a zero gender pay gap, because maybe you've got a zero gender pay gap and that's as a result of something that you're doing wrong, and that you shouldn't have a zero gender pay gap. But that really isn't how this is panning out. And it got off to a really bad start, of course, with the whole Carrie Gracie thing on the BBC. The BBC gave their figures very early on, and then Carrie Gracie made a personal stand, which was one of the oddest personal stands I'd ever seen, because effectively what a lot of this boils down to is the claim that men are going in there and demanding more pay and getting more pay. And so what did Carrie Gracie do? She went in and demanded more pay, and they said, yeah, okay, we'll give you more pay. And she said, oh, it's not about the money. I don't want more pay. I'm going to resign anyway. Which is like, well, if that's what women are doing, it's no fucking wonder. Is it really? You're not getting paid as much. Right, if it isn't about the fucking pay, because men are going in and going, I demand more pay, and when they say, okay, we'll give you more pay, they're not going, oh no, it's not about the money, I'm resigning. Right, it's there was a level of absurdity to that. But the Carrie Gracie case was that she was the BBC's political editor for China, and she objected to the fact that Jeremy Bowen, the Middle Eastern editor, and John Sopel, the US editor, were getting paid substantially more than she was. I have to say with regard to that, if you'd said to me, the US political editor, the Middle Eastern political editor, and the Chinese political editor, right? You don't know who they are, Jim, right? You don't know who they are. You don't know whether male or female. Which do you think's going to get paid more and which do you think's going to get paid less, right? I'd say, well, of all the political editors around the world, I would expect the US and the Middle Eastern political editors to get paid substantially more than any other fucker, because that's where most of the news is happening. These are people you are seeing on the news all the fucking time. This is where you're going to have your very, very top people, your big guns, right? And so John Sopel went into that job. He was already a big name. They gave him a big salary. Jeremy Bowen, I don't know at what point he's done that job for such a long time, but he's always in the news. Those two guys are always in the news because the US and the Middle East are always in the news. I'll be honest, I didn't make a video about it at the time. I was a bit embarrassed because I'd never fucking heard of Carrie Gracie, right? I'd never heard of her. Then I listened to, who's that British cunt called who's always on American TV? Fucking hell, can't think of his name. Right wanker, right? But whatever he's called, maybe his name will come to me in a minute. I used to be the editor of the Daily Mirror. He was on TV, Piers Morgan, and he said the same thing. He said, I feel a bit ashamed because I'm involved in the media. He said, but I'd never heard of Carrie Gracie. That tells you all you need to know. Even without knowing the sexes of them, you would expect those two people to earn more than Carrie Gracie. But no mention of that. It was carried on so many media things, the fact that she'd resigned and the fact that she was being paid less because she's a woman. And nobody was pointing out the fact that in what world would the Chinese editor be paid the same as the Middle Eastern or the US editor? That doesn't make, it's like as if, right, we've got it, right, in the name of equality now, just so we don't discriminate against women, everybody has to be paid the same. It doesn't matter whether you've got a premium job like the US editor or whether you're the editor of fucking Fiji, right? It doesn't matter. You've all got to be paid the same, just on the off chance that the Fijian editor could be a woman and the US editor could be a fucking man. Now, I'm not saying that some of those positions, there isn't some discrepancy on the ground of your sex. There maybe is. Right, but that was just a really fucking shit example for everybody to be majoring on. And yet that's the way it's gone. I looked at the data for the NHS. And they made the same jump they always make, right? They said, oh, women in the NHS are getting paid this, men in the NHS are getting paid that. And then they just talked about what the top doctors are getting paid. And the top male consultants are earning a bit more than the top female consultants, as if that's what's creating the gender pay gap in the NHS. And that's what's rotten with the way that these statistics are being viewed. The reason that women get paid less in the NHS is because 90% of nurses are female, and not one fucking thing has been done to address that fucking statistic for decade after decade after decade, because nobody gives a fuck about the fact that 90% of nurses are female. If 90% of nurses were male, then there'd just be endless annual reports. How do we get more women into nursing? What campaigns are we going to have to encourage women into nursing? Nurses earn less than doctors. And it's the huge numbers of nurses in the NHS, and that is why women are earning less within the NHS, generally because most nurses are women. No mention of that, no interest in that, no concern over that. And the problem is that is what this has boiled down to. We're seeing stats from company after company after company, and all anybody's interested in is what are the very highest earners earning, but that is only one of the factors. What about all the other factors? What about the lowest earners? One of the things, I'm going to give you some suggestions of things that we could do then to reduce the gender pay gap. The first thing is that a lot of men who earn shit money are working as labourers on building sites, working as labourers in fields, and these aren't for companies that are involved in these 250 plus workers who are having to declare. They're not the big name blue ribbon companies. The big name blue ribbon companies are employing women as cleaners and things like that on the same crap money. So what we need to do is we need to force women that are cleaning for these companies to start working as labourers on building sites and earning shit money. Start working as labourers on farms and earning shit money. And start encouraging some of these guys who are labouring on farms and building sites and earning shit money to start working as cleaners for some of these companies. That would help. Something else we need to do is to start coercing people, because that's what it's going to take, I'm afraid, to run their lives differently. I'm a perfect example with me and my wife, because this is how we've arranged our lives. She earned more than I did by about 30%, and then we agreed to have a child. We went for it. As a result of that, I made sure that I monetized what I did on YouTube. I've increased my earnings by about a third, right? She's reduced her earnings by about a quarter because she's reduced the amount of time she's at work. I'm doing more work and she's doing less work. But according to the stats, which is all this is interested in, right, that shows as she is getting a bad end of the deal. Even though this has happened not because this is what I wanted, because I said, you better reduce your hours at work and spend more time with our son. It's because that's what she wanted to do, right? But there's no measure of that. We're only collecting stats on the gender pay gap. We're not collecting stats on how much time fathers get to spend with their children versus mothers. Nobody gives a fuck about that. Maybe we need to be conducting those stats as well and putting those sides alongside it. What you would need to start doing is coercing people there. Coercing women to not reduce their hours, coercing men somehow to start reducing their hours. So you have new fathers saying, I'm going to stop doing 5 days a week, I'm going to start doing 4 days a week. And women saying, yeah, I'd still like to go down to 4 days a week, but I don't feel I can. I'm going to have to keep doing 5 days a week and pursuing my career, pursuing it all full time. Those are the kind of things you're going to have to do. At the moment in the UK, women get 38 weeks paid maternity leave, men get 4 weeks, right? There is no way on the face of the fucking planet that men are going to get 38 weeks paternity leave paid. Never gonna fucking happen. If we have shared leave, it happens every fucking time in every country where it's done. It's the woman that gets the majority of it, unless you put some legislation in that makes couples give so much of it to the father. Because why wouldn't you? I've just had a fucking baby. I want the leave. What kind of a father's going to take the leave when I've just given birth to the baby and I've got this special bond? It's mothers that get that leave, and that sets them back in the workplace. So maybe, how about this for a bitter fucking pill to swallow? We need to make this affordable, reduce maternity leave down to 20 weeks, increase paternity leave up to 20 weeks, equalise it, 20 weeks paid leave each, and you can't distribute it differently. That takes men out the workplace, sets them back, and it puts women in the workplace again earlier, so that has less of an impact on their career. Is that an unpalatable thing to do? Is that a horrible thing to do? You fucking damn right it's a horrible thing to do, and I wouldn't recommend doing it. But if what you're going to do is place stats above people, that is the kind of thing you are going to have to do. At present, what we've had is a situation where these stats are being released, and what is happening in the media is they're saying if there's a gap, we have to tackle it. We have to tackle this gap. You cannot tackle the gap. Sure, the high flyers, right? We're going to have to force women to go into stockbroking. They don't seem to want to do it willingly in the same numbers as men. Right, we're going to have to fucking force them somehow. It's going to be nasty, it's going to be horrible. Some women aren't going to want to do it, but it's going to have to be done. We're going to have to force some men not to go into things that they want to go in because too many men are going into it. None of these solutions are palatable, but I don't know any other way round other than to say to Goldman Sachs, right, if you need to employ 10 new people, right? 10 new people, and you have 5 female applicants and 500 male applicants, you've got to take all 5 women and 5 out of the 500 men. If we're going to do that, we need to change the law. We need to change the fucking law to make discrimination on the grounds of sex allowable. These are the kind of things we are going to have to do. We're going to have to coerce women to go back to work for longer hours than they want to, coerce men to go back to work for hours less, coerce men and women who are doing the shitty jobs to do different types of shitty jobs. Nobody is prepared to do those things, but I cannot see any other way around it. There's no discussion of this in the media. All the media wants to do is look at the stats and say, well, that's unacceptable. The gap has to be 0, and we have to find some magical way. Companies, wave your fucking magical wand and find a magical way of reducing this, but don't do any of the wholly unacceptable, abhorrent things that you would have to do that will bring this into fruition. It's one of the most stupid states of affairs that I can remember in my lifetime, and there's absolutely no fucking sensible discussion occurring about it whatsoever. Okay, that's what I thought about it. Interested to know what you think. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.